Welcome to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Today's very special guest is from the city of Toronto. He works with the Toronto Marlies as a ringside reporter as well as an in-stadium and digital host for the Toronto Argonauts. He is no stranger to the sports scene in this city, so please give it up for Sean Bowen. Sean, super excited to talk to you today, man. You definitely have a very strong history of sports in your family, and as I can see from the Fighting Irish shirt and virtual backgrounds, that you definitely have grown up as someone that follows sports just a little bit, I think.
Yeah, Mateus, thanks for having me, man. I do apologize. I think I missed the memo on the dress code here. You got the nice blazer and the golf shirt on. I'm sitting here looking like a schmuck. I got the suntan face and the backwards hat. Yeah, I clearly missed the dress code.
I won't fault you if you gotten a few rounds just before coming on. You know, the golf season is
Oh, you
upon
have
us, and
to.
so it's necessary.
Yeah, I shot 85 last Sunday, so that's the round to beat here thus far in the summer. So I'm actually pretty proud of that.
Are you a member at any courses, or are you just all over?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I just kind of piggyback off my old man, who's a member at a course up in Stouffville. So usually he's always looking for someone to go and beat him. So he'll call me or my three other brothers to go for a round. So I usually kind of reap the rewards of that, and then if not, then go play with my buddies, kind of in and around Southern Ontario, maybe a little bit north as well, like up in Barrie, and um, try to find like the courses that are a little bit quieter because like the ones in the city now, man, like they're packed every weekend. Like I think since like the pandemic, everyone kind of got that golf itch.
Mhm.
And it's like every course, every weekend. It's like you have to call at least like if you want to play Saturday, you got to call Monday morning. Otherwise, like you're not getting on. So it's like we kind of go a little bit further north, like up in Barrie and see if we can get on some of those tracks. And they're gorgeous out there too, man. They're not as busy, which is nice.
Have you ever gone golfing outside of Ontario?
Yeah, I've golfed in the States a few times. I once played in Mexico. I was down there for my brother's wedding, and it may have been the hottest day recorded in Mexico. I think it was like honestly like 300 degrees outside, and I've never sweat more in my life playing a stationary sport.
You weren't worried sweating because your old man was stepping up to the tee box and you knew that he was just going to absolutely crush and
No,
drive the
he's a,
green on his
no,
drive?
no, he's an awful golfer. It,
So
it
this,
doesn't it doesn't it doesn't take much to beat him. So that's no, I wasn't sweating for that reason. It was literally the hottest day I think I've ever felt in my life. And you had people running out of the bushes with cold towels and water for you because it was like honestly, man, it was like the most disgusting thing. Like we stepped on hole number one and I was drenched. And I was wearing a gray shirt and it was not a good look.
oh my goodness. I mean,
Yeah, it wasn't good.
well, I know that's half my family's heritage is from Brazil and the other half from Portugal. Two countries where golf is absolutely not popular, and probably in Brazil, especially for that reason, considering that the temperature in the summer close to the equator can reach like 40 on average. So definitely
uh
not a good time if you're golfing.
yeah, that's not me, man. I am more of a winter guy. I'm a husky individual, so the wintertime is right up my alley. Sweater, sweatpants, that's it. The summer heat sometimes it gets unbearable.
Are you, I guess hockey must be the number one sport that you follow and play then.
Yeah, hockey and football, I guess, would probably be my two like prominent sports. I grew up playing both. Played a year of high school football. Didn't last the whole entire season. I ended up hurting myself, and I had other commitments that were going on that were work related. So they kind of said like scram off the team. So that kind of sucked, but I enjoyed every minute of it. And then just obviously like kind of fell in love with the game. Watching it with my dad and my brothers, and then hockey we didn't really have too much of a choice growing up. It was, you were born with the Maple Leafs jersey on and you got born into the long suffering history of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I am forever grateful for that because I think they're the greatest team in the world. And I'm very fortunate enough that I get a chance to work with them throughout the course of the season. But yeah, football and hockey are the two prominent sports in the Bowen household. And then, go Blue Jays in the summertime.
So growing up as a kid, I can only imagine what it would have been like, especially with the influence of your dad. And he's no stranger to the city of Toronto, especially Leafs fans. So what was that experience like growing up, and how do you reflect on it now that you yourself are involved within MLSC, working for the Argos as well as for the Marlies, who are the affiliate of the Maple Leafs?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool. I kind of had a flashback moment this year actually. So when I was a kid, I was obviously very fortunate enough to attend a lot of Leaf games with my dad, and I would sit with him and Jim Ralph, who does color with Bonesy, and who's done it for the past 20 some odd years, the two of them. And I would kind of squeeze in the middle between the two of them with a big bag of chips and a pop and an ice cream in the second intermission, and I'd be writing stuff down for my dad and who scored the goal and when the goal was scored and blah 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 blah. And that happened up until I was about 12 years old, and then I kind of got into another path after that. And then this year, while working in the playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs with the Maple Leafs, I kind of moseyed on up to my dad's broadcast booth and sat with him and Ralphie, and it's like I felt like I was 10 years old again, pointing stuff out for them. And now I think they kind of leaned on me a little bit more because they're a little bit older and maybe the eyes aren't as good. So I was pointing and snapping to seeing who's on the ice and who's hurt and who hasn't played in a shift in the last little bit. So yeah, it was really cool. But growing up with my dad, that was kind of one of the reasons why I fell in love with journalism broadcasting, because I see the excitement, the passion that my dad had and still has for doing play-by-play for the Maple Leafs. And it's something that, it's always kind of been near and dear to my heart. So when I was in high school, kind of trying to make the decision of what's next and what it is that I want to do, I actually went into plumbing for a bit. And if it wasn't for one of my like best friend's moms who told me, she's like, follow your dreams, and the worst thing that could happen is they don't work and you go back to something else. So it was kind of that moment there that I said, I'm going to try to give this a go. And I've been in the industry here for the past 10 years or so, and wouldn't change anything about it. It's I think the old saying, right, is if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. So it's pretty much where I'm at right now. So
when you talk about the experience you had watching Leafs games as a kid with your dad, obviously, being at a Leafs game is amazing for fans in the city and for just hockey fans in general. But the way you describe remembering just being where you were, like being beside your dad, I think that makes those memories that much more special, because even though the Leafs haven't won or been to the Stanley Cup finals in your life, it doesn't diminish the fact that you got to experience that with your dad and still do. And, even if you're in your 30s, like it's still like you mentioned before we started recording, it's like you're a kid, it's something that's, you don't even really think about until you're there again.
Oh, no, you're totally right. I mean, sports is an escape, right? And it's you become, I don't care how old you are, you almost become a little kid when you go back into whether it's a football stadium, a hockey rink, a ball diamond. It's just you kind of get taken away by the whole, ambiance of what is Scotiabank Arena, what is BMO Field, or what is the Rogers Center. And it's just, you kind of escape your day-to-day life, and you go back to being what it's like being a fan. And I think being a fan is arguably one of the best things that you can do in your life. Yeah, you're not always going to win. There are going to be some lean years. And like you said, I haven't been fortunate enough in the 32 years on this planet. I haven't seen the Leafs make a Stanley Cup final. We've been close a few times. I specifically remember in 2002, Jeff O'Neill scoring with one eye in overtime to beat the Leafs in Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I remember being there with my dad watching the game, and it was just like, you see how close you get to it, and you don't know how many opportunities you're going to have. Mm-hmm. And it really does sting, right? Because you don't have too much of an influence on the game when you're the broadcaster, you're the reporter. You obviously want to see the team do well because you want to advance and you want to have those opportunities. But yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks, but it's sitting there with my dad throughout the course of the playoffs and just seeing his excitement and his raw emotion, and it gets you giddy about it. I mean, that's what being a fan's all about.
Did you grow up also watching a lot of football as well?
Didn't have a choice. It was Notre Dame football on Saturdays, and it was the Green Bay Packers on Sunday.
I feel like those two teams go so hand in hand for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, they're the two greatest teams in the entire world, so of course they do, right?
And the Maple Leafs paired. I mean, Blue Jays.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're as big into baseball, but Blue Jays are definitely into that realm as well.
I have been a part of my sporting teams. I've been a part of 3 championships, one of legal drinking age.
Well, 3 championships is still pretty good.
But let me say this: the 2 championships came when I was 2 and 3 when the Jays won the back-to-back World Series. The next championship came in 2010 with the Packers.
Well,
So
at
I
least
haven't.
2010 was more memory. Yeah.
Yeah, my teams haven't fared well in terms of winning championships.
Well, I think that's a story all too familiar to a lot of Canadian sports fans in general. And I know growing up, I always felt the same thing. Like, will my teams ever win? Growing up, I cheered for the Raptors and I cheered for, I guess in hockey, like we didn't really cheer for the Jets because they didn't exist when I was born.
Big
But then,
Thrashers guy, eh?
I mean, we went to Moose games. We followed the Moose,
Yeah.
and they lost a Calder Cup final in 2009 when I was in junior high. I remember that. And then they've had good teams and come close since. But now the Jets are back, it is more of a thing we follow. But yeah, definitely very tough to see what's happened to Canadian teams. And who knows with Edmonton this year? I mean, I kind of doubt that they can win it all because it's still a Canadian team that makes me just feel that fear of it seeming too good to be true. But I hope I'm wrong.
Now, let me ask you a question though. So, like, if you're a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, do you want to see another Canadian team win the Stanley Cup? Because me personally, like, I don't like that. Like, if I want to see a Canadian team win, I want it to be the Maple Leafs. I don't care. I hope the Edmonton Oilers lose next round. That's just me being the selfish Canadian fan. Maybe I'm just blinded by the Leafs, but that's like,
I think it's different because growing up, hockey was definitely one of the last sports I ever really got into. So for me, the Jets coming back is more like a cool thing for the city of Winnipeg. And I think it's enjoyable to see just people in Canada celebrate. Growing up as a kid, for example, soccer was my first love. So my family's from Brazil and Portugal. I don't want to see another team from South America win. That's the worst thing in the world.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
like in 2014, when Germany thrashed Brazil, like I want them to get, someone to beat up on Germany, but then that means Argentina gets to win the World Cup in Brazil. And like, that cannot happen. Absolutely not. So it was just the worst case scenario. I don't,
Well, it's like everyone last year cheering for the Canadians in the Stanley Cup final. Like, I'd rather cut my arm off.
Yeah, 100.
Like,
And especially
I'm not doing that.
For Leafs fans too, you have to put the rivalry in a context. Winnipeg, maybe not as intense with, like, let's say the Oilers. Winnipeg and the Oilers and the Flames had so many rivalries, but like Winnipeg and Toronto, yeah, if you're an intense hockey fan or if that's your first love, then you can hate them.
Doesn't matter.
Like for me, I'm not a big hockey fan necessarily. So I'm like, if Toronto won, I'd be like, that's, good for them. I wouldn't be like, no, they can't win. Like, yes, people in Winnipeg and every other Canadian city love hating on Toronto. But personally, the way I look at it, and especially as someone in broadcasting, I want to see the good stories. I want to see people smiling and happy and crying. As a kid, I felt so upset seeing Italy win the World Cup. I was like, this is the worst day of my life. But now when I look back on it, like 16 years later, I'm like, wow, to see how excited they were in the emotion, like that's pretty special. And the fact that I've been able to experience that too, just gives me context as to how important that is for some people's lives in that moment. So like, I try not to let my own emotions get in the way too much, but sometimes we're human beings and we're selfish. So that's okay.
Oh, totally, dude. I went to a Catholic high school, and so I grew up with like same guys I still run with today, like some of like my best friends. And, I think a group of 12 of us, 2 of us weren't Italian. So I've gone through, I think, was it 2006 when they won it the World Cup or Euro Cup?
World Cup, yes.
Right. And then, and then the most recent one that they just won too. Like I've got like 10 buddies who were Italian for a week and a half when this thing's on. And it's like, they claim they know everyone on the team, but they have no idea who's on the team, but they all claim that they do.
Yeah. And that's why, when you think about where you and your brothers, like your family and coming from Toronto, it's like, well, if your dad does play-by-play for the Maple Leafs, like you damn well better, worship at their altar, and you better not want anyone else to succeed at any cost, because that's your, like, the lifeblood of your family, like for a big part.
There was no choice in the matter, dude. It was, if you, none of us were stupid to go against the grain either. I don't even know what would have happened if one of my brothers said, you know what, I actually like the Red Wings, or I like the Bruins, or, Montreal's my favorite team. I honestly don't know what would have happened.
I need to ask you this though, because the teams that you and your brothers cheer for, I'd assume all your family does, they're all teams that have like very distinct history, very, very tight knit, almost, in a cultish level of like fandom.
Yeah.
Does that all come solely from your dad's influence? He just grew up cheering for those teams, passed on from his father, and then so the tradition continues, or how did that origin come to be?
Yeah, pretty much. I know my dad said like, so I've unfortunately, like, I never met my dad's dad. He passed away when my dad was well, I think he was maybe about 16, 17 years old. But like, so my dad grew up in Sudbury, Ontario. And I mean, the way that he explained it to us was, it's not like today where, everything's at the touch of your fingers and you can get whatever sport you want. He said it was Saturdays. They only played Notre Dame Fighting Irish football. And Sundays it was the Packers. So he's like, you didn't really have too much of a choice. So his dad was a big Fighting Irish fan. So, fortunate for them, they got to watch on Saturdays, and that just kind of got passed down to us. And when we were kids, I know my dad, like, he first started doing this, I think I would have been 6 or 7 years old. We rented a motorhome and we drove down to South Bend, Indiana. We've been doing it for the past 21 years. And we'll always kind of go before Leafs training camp and preseason. So that way Bonesy doesn't miss any games. But we end up getting like 12 guys in an RV. It's all guys, no girls allowed on this trip. We end up playing some golf while we're down there. We tour the university. We've done it, 21 times, but it still feels so magical when you step on the campus. Cause it's like, there's just that aura and that history about it with, the buildings and the quietness of the campus. It's hard to explain. You kind of have to be there. But we end up going to a game, you do the whole tailgating aspect. It's a blast.
So have you ever asked your dad what it was like to watch Notre Dame versus Miami? But watch that game back in the 90s?
Oh, yeah. Catholics versus convicts, buddy. That's one of the best 30 for 30s out there.
What like, I mean, that would have been a little bit before you would have been watching football, I think, right?
Yeah, my biggest rivalry in terms of like college football will always be Notre Dame versus Michigan. And we've gone to the Big House, and the Big House is something like out of this world too. You put 110,000 people in that stadium, it's like you can't hear yourself think. I was there for, I don't know if the name sounds familiar, but his name was Denard Robinson. Shoelaces is what they called him because he never tied his shoes. I watched that young man throw 4 touchdowns and run for 250 yards in one game. And I've never seen anything like that. That guy was like my favorite collegiate athlete, even though he was, on like my, sworn, like, moral enemy team. That guy was so electric when he played football, and it never translated to the NFL. I think he got drafted by the Jags, and he, I think they tried him out at quarterback a couple times. And then I think he went to like running back, and then I think he ultimately kind of like went off to be a cornerback, but he never really survived in the NFL. But man, that guy was like, he was everything at Michigan football.
Well, you're talking to someone who is a long stuff, or maybe not very long, but a Jaguars fan. So the name Denard Robinson is extremely familiar.
How do you land up on being a Jags fan?
I've actually been asked that question. I've been asked that question 100 times. And I was actually also asked that question earlier today when someone who came into our class from Sportsnet was saying, "Oh, I'm a Bills fan." And they say, "Oh, I hate the Jaguars." I'm like, "Well, why?" And they're like, "Oh, because we always have boring games and always beat us." I'm like, "Oh, well, you're telling me." So
yeah, but you're a kid from Canada though. Like, how do you like? I don't understand how is it possible anyone in this country lands on being a Jags fan? Because it's got to be like proximity, Like, I mean, here in Toronto, it'd be Buffalo and maybe Minnesota, Green Bay, obviously Seattle, New York. But like, you're going down to the Panhandle in Florida, and you're living and dying with sunshine. Trevor Lawrence, man.
I mean, what I will say is this: in Winnipeg, besides bandwagon teams carry everywhere. Patriots,
yeah,
like Steelers, you name it, Giants,
yeah,
Jets. But the NFC North is the division that represents Manitoba the best in terms of fandom. So you will find lots of Lions fans, Bears fans, Vikings fans, and Packers fans. Number one is Packers, obviously, because they're the best team. Then the Vikings, then the Bears. So many like people who have like boomer parents, like the 40 plus. It's insane. It's the classic, like, I'm a blue collar person whose dad followed the Bears, and then I follow the Bears, and then my son follows the Bears, and so on and so forth. And then the Lions, I think, is also just for the sake of proximity. You'd probably find more in Toronto because of, or like the Windsor being across the bridge kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think being a Lions fan might be the toughest thing on the planet.
I would argue, like, if you think about the 4 major leagues, Lions are probably in the top 2 for sure.
Yeah, I would 100% agree that I think that it's like, if you were just to watch the game of football today and you had to pick a team, like, I honestly think, and no disrespect to the Jags, but I would probably go Jags Lions.
In terms, like you say, you would
Like of what I would not want to be a fan
Oh
of.
yeah. I mean, like I can't blame you. The way so I'll explain quickly how I came upon it just to give some context. So like I said before, my parents are immigrants, so football and hockey are the two sports that are the farthest from my cultural heritage. So when my dad came to Canada, again, didn't know anything about football, didn't make sense. He came to Winnipeg, the Bombers were successful, but it doesn't make sense to him. So the team that was good in the NFL at the time was the San Diego Chargers. So he watched the Chargers growing up in like the early to mid 80s. And then when my brothers and I grew up, we watched the Chargers games with him when they had LT and Rivers and all them. So technically, when we first started watching football, we all cheer for the Chargers. And still to this day, that is like a team that we'll always have roots for because of our dad. But what happened was my younger brother and I, we wanted to play high school football, but we didn't grow up playing it and it's not in our family. So we had to find a way to immerse ourselves in the game, playing video games, throwing football around, everything. So the two game consoles we had were Dreamcast. I don't know, you know that one, and Xbox. So the football game we had on Dreamcast was NFL 2K, 2K1, and 2K2, the originals. And on Xbox, Madden 07. So in that game, my brother would play as the Chargers. And because he's my younger brother, I gave him the grace of getting to choose the team that he wants, and I would not copy. That was like our agreement. So then I wanted to choose a team in the game that was good. And I wanted to choose a team that I thought had also a nice uniform. The Vikings were obviously really good in that game, but I was like, Minnesota, that's too much of a geographic cop-out. I'm a very anti-bandwagon person. I don't like the bandwagon. Unless it's born into like yourself, then it's totally understandable. You don't have a choice. You know, so then I was flipping around and, you know, Falcons are good. Jaguars are good. And I was like, oh, the Jaguars, like their teal jerseys, like green's my favorite color, but I don't really like the Packers because I found that there's too many Packers fans I met growing up and they're like, they're very distinct.
People.
You know? You'll know a Packers fan, you meet Packers fan.
Yeah.
You're one yourself.
They're extremely intelligent and well-versed in the game.
And great looking and the whole nine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just
the best facial hair of any people that can grow facial hair.
Oh, yeah, exactly. 100% confirmed. Exactly.
So I was like, okay, well, you know, the Jaguars are good in that game. And then we would play Madden 07. And the Jaguars are good in that game.
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized, they just rebranded. This was 2013, mind you. So they rebranded. And I was like, oh, well, no one really knows anything about them. They're very unpopular. And they just rebranded. So, you know, I could probably get behind supporting this team because, you know, they're at the lowest of the low. Like the only way to go is up. And the Browns, I'm like, the Browns have a long history being terrible. The Lions have a long history being terrible. So it's like, okay, I got to choose a team that's not that good, but they don't have a super, super long history being terrible. So I landed on the Jags, and now here we are today.
The Jags were a wagon a few years ago, man. Like before they traded like Jalen Ramsey, like, I mean, they were great. I mean, they were Super Bowl contenders at one point, right? And then, you know, everything just completely stopped for them.
Yeah, it's I think it mainly has to do with Tom Coughlin, and that's why structural organization matters. Like with Green Bay, like I kind of do and kind of don't at the same time feel bad for them because it's like you have two of the most talented, like arguably, you can debate this however much you want, but Favre and Rodgers are for sure two of the top 5 most talented quarterbacks ever, and you only have one Super Bowl each to show for it. I don't think any fans of the Chiefs or the Raiders or Dolphins or Packers, the teams that won like the first 7 or 8 Super Bowls, I don't think you can flex titles from 50 years ago. That's like it's like the Leafs, you know.
And being a Packers fan, I think, I mean, I probably speak for a lot of cheeseheads in this, but they don't sign players, you know, and that's the most frustrating thing about being a fan. They don't sign or they don't trade for players, you know, like you've got arguably the greatest quarterback in the league right now, and your best wide receiver just up and walked over to Las Vegas. So why not try to replace somebody? You're not going to replace his caliber of player, but try to match it. And they go in and bring in Sammy Watkins. And you're just like, well, what are we doing here? You know, it's, I mean, they don't, but they really put an emphasis on drafting and developing. And I mean, look, I mean, case in point, Devontae Adams, right? Like Fresno State University wasn't a high pick by any stretch of the means, but draft, develop, and it certainly helps when you have number 12 throwing you the ball as well. It kind of makes anyone look good, right? So
it is tough for Packers fans, and I do understand maybe the market and whatever goes into it, but structural organization matters. And so that's why when you cheer for teams like Notre Dame or the Leafs the Packers, they have long standing traditions.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think it really speaks to the kind of demographic of their fans, like people that are loyal, people that have tradition in their family. And you can see it like four boys plus your dad. It's like that's a fraternity right there, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I said, buddy, no choice growing up.
What's your favorite memory of watching each, like favorite memory from each of the three teams you follow? Like one game or one moment that you're like, this to me will live on forever in my mind.
That's a really good question. I'll probably start. So the Packers, I think the Super Bowl, um, in Dallas against the Steelers was arguably tops in my mind. Like just everything coming together.
Mhm.
Charles Woodson was one of my favorite players growing up. Michigan as well, but when he came over to the Pac, man, he was electric. And unfortunately, he didn't play in the Super Bowl. He was hurt, but that year, like Jordy Nelson, Clay Matthews, AJ Hawk, just such a lovable like misfits, a group of misfits, excuse me, that just kind of put it all together at the end and ended up, making it to the Super Bowl and eventually winning it. Notre Dame, that's a tough one. I would say my dad and I went to Stanford one year. We were in California with the Leafs, and we ended up flying out to. I don't know where Stanford is in California. I'm probably sounding really stupid right now, but I'm not sure. Like if it's a town called Stanford or it's somewhere outside of a town. But we went there. That stadium is really cool because they have all these pine trees around it. So it literally looks like something out of a storybook when you go there. So my dad and I went to do that. That would have been 2011, and it would have been the year prior to them going to the national championship and getting absolutely thumped by Alabama. So that was a good one. The Leafs, this is going to sound really strange too. Game 6, 2002, against the Ottawa Senators. I was 12 years old. I was with my brother and one of my good buddies at the time. We went to go see Game 6. Leafs were down in the series. Ottawa had a chance to clinch the series against the Leafs. And for whatever reason, my brother and I were very superstitious at the time. I happened to go to the bathroom and the Leafs scored. And so my brother and his buddies, and mind you, my brother's 8 years older than me. So they forced me to drink a whole bunch of water and stuffed me in the bathroom. So I had to listen to the game pretty much when I was 12 years old inside the bathroom. And I remember hearing the crowd erupt. And I was like, oh my God, Ottawa just scored. And I come running back out to my seat and I just see like my brother and all of his buddies like, yeah, let's go. Like Alex McGillney scored. So they ended up winning the game. The Leafs won game 6, and then they came back to Toronto and won game 7. So that was probably, I would say, maybe arguably one of my favorite Leaf moments growing up. Haven't had the ultimate one yet, but hopefully that one's coming soon as well.
Wow, I mean, like, and again, when you cheer for a team like the Leafs, it's kind of hard to. You're gonna like,
Yeah.
every game you pick is gonna be strange. Like, there's no like, oh, they
Oh
went to the
yeah.
finals, right? Like,
No. It's yeah. You're gonna have a lot of those ones unless you were born before '67. Like I think a lot of people are gonna have those kind of one-off games where it's meant something to them, or watching someone score a hat trick or going to the game with someone, right? Like no one has had that ultimate. Well, my favorite game as well, of course, when they won the Stanley Cup in 2023, right? So
what has been your favorite moment or most fond memory you've had with all your family, like all your immediate family at once?
oh, that's another really good question, man. You're putting me on the spot here. Um,
Not trying to stump you, but
yeah, that's a hard one. I don't know. Oh, okay, I can tell you this one. So we went to O2 Arena in Ireland to watch Notre Dame play the Naval Academy, and Notre Dame spanked them like 56 to Cobb. So my dad and my two older brothers and my younger brother, we went to that game and did a little vacation out in Ireland. That would have been 2011, I think. So that was a pretty good memory of going to do that. My older brother spilled beer on a priest that that game too, which we also have photo evidence of. So that was actually pretty funny.
do people ever think that you and your brothers are like quadruplets or like the Russian dolls or any of that stuff? Do you get that growing up or not really
Uh,
because of the age gap?
no, I'm the youngest of three, and then I have a younger brother who's 22. But me and my middle brother, we're 6 years apart, and we always got confused for being twins. Like we somewhat look like each other. That's why I kind of grow the beard out a little bit longer in the summertime. So it's like I don't get that. Hey, are you Derek? I'm like, no. Not Derek. I'm Sean.
Well, growing up with two brothers myself, people would always think, are you guys triplets or are you the Russian dolls? So that's why I figured to ask, when you grow up in like a fraternity of just boys, like it's
Oh,
a different
it's
experience.
oh, dude, we had this conversation with my mom a couple days ago. We all just thanked her for just like the ultimate sacrifice of like, I don't know how you did it with the three of us, but somehow we're all here with 10 toes and 10 fingers. So God bless you, right? Like, because our house was a war zone growing up. You got two older brothers, man. We were ultra competitive with each other. It didn't matter if we were playing video games, if we were playing mini sticks, it always ended up in a fight. Always.
That's like a lot. That should be a lot. It's like if you have three boys or more, thou shalt like have to break up
Oh yeah.
fights every day in the basement.
Oh, buddy, our basement, there was holes in the walls. Like it was just like body contact playing mini sticks. Like you getting thrown through the wall. And then if you lost, there'd be a stick coming, right across your head. And the next thing you know, it'd just be stuck right in the into the drywall too. So it was like three boys, all very competitive, all played sports growing up. Like the juices were running in our house 24/7. Like it was a competition to see who could get to bed quicker, right? Like that between the three of us.
How would you say that has positively impacted everything that you guys have gone on to do now in your adult lives?
Oh, without a doubt, man. Like my brothers are my best friends. I like, like when you're younger, it's like, they're your brothers and you hate them and you don't want to be anywhere near them because it's like there's always that sibling rivalry. But as you get older, you have a much more appreciation for what they did and mentoring you and making you who you are. And I wouldn't really be here to, where I am right now without like the support of my family and the support of my brothers of always kind of pushing you to, be better. And my older brother will always text me kind of after a game and say, "Hey, we were watching tonight and your nephew was going nuts when he saw you on TV." And like, for me, like, that's like, I love that type of stuff. Like, it's awesome. Both my brothers have kids. So it's always nice when you get a text message from them saying like, "Oh yeah, your niece was watching tonight and she was, yelling Uncle Shawnee," and same thing with my older brother with his kids too. So the positive reinforcements, and then same thing with my dad. Like we'll always, kind of always talk after, like if I do a Marlies game or stuff like that. And he's like, how do you think you did? And we'll kind of go, it's almost like a coach aspect of it. Like, what did you think? How did you think you did? Or were you too quick on that? Did you slow down? Did you get everything in you wanted to say? And then, go back and watch what you did to make yourself better. So it's nice having that type of support group. And then my mom's just always, it doesn't matter what I did. She's, she'll always support regardless. I could have the worst game in the entire world on television and she would say I did great. So
Did you ever grow up watching the CFL as well? I gotta ask.
oh yeah, man. My dad used to be like the spotter at Argos games. And that was a guy like on the PA system who would come in and say, third and second Toronto, right ball at the 22-yard line. So when we were kids, we used to go to what was the Sky Dome all the time to go watch games. And, like 3 years ago, the position opened up and I just kind of hinted that like, I'd be very interested in doing it if the opportunity was presented to myself. And so, I mean, they asked me to do it. And we did our first year. My first game working in the CFL, we played Hamilton, and I think we lost 56-10. And
I know what game you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And being in the media room and head coach, I think it was Corey Chamberlain, who was the coach at that time. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do I ask him here? So what I did was I texted Paul Hendrick, who used to work for Leafs Nation Network, who's a good family friend of ours. I texted Henny and I said, "Henny, you've been through some pretty lean years at the Leafs. What do I ask right now?" And he says, "Just ask, where did it break down for you guys today?" And that was it. It was the best advice I've ever got. Don't ask a specific question about, that play or whatever. Why did you guys lose 56-10? Just ask, how did it break down, and let him tell the story. So it was, I started there that year. Last year, then we had the pandemic. This past season, they asked me to do the in-stadium stuff, which was awesome, being able to interact with fans. And this year, we're getting geared up for hopefully what is a pretty special season.
Yeah, I mean, the Argos have a long-standing tradition as well, so that's why I figured I'd ask. You mentioned, and at like all the American teams, Canadian teams, but the CFL, I mean, in Winnipeg, it's like the CFL is, what it is like.
Oh man, the CFL is honestly like, I love it, and it really bugs me when people are like, oh, it's not the NFL. No, it's not the NFL for good reason. It's not the NFL. It's a completely different game up here. And it's, if you love offense and you love having the ball thrown, this is the league for you. Unfortunately, it kind of sucks for running backs and halfbacks and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're going to a game. The average score is 38-37 on a nightly basis. You're getting out of your seat multiple times and cheering on a touchdown. That's the greatest thing about it. The entertainment value is through the roof in the Canadian Football League, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially when you consider Toronto's comeback against the Red Blacks in 2018 at home. They were down by 24 or something like that. And then the final play where McLeod Bethel Thompson finds another great former college football player who is also good at iconic comebacks, Armani Edwards, if you know exactly what he is famous for.
Oh yeah, he was Armani Edwards he was Appalachian State, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, he was the quarterback. That's right. Yeah. I remember being in Notre Dame Stadium when the PA announcer came on and said the score, when he said Michigan 10, or what was, I think it was what was the final score? 23-21 or something like that.
It was 24-23 or something. I don't know. Something like that.
And the PA announcer comes on, he says, final score in Michigan, Appalachian State, Michigan 21, Appalachian State 23. And the crowd just went nuts because it was unheard of, right? You're a D3 school in Appalachian State coming in to beat the maize and blue. It was, that was nuts. I remember watching that. But yeah, even last year, dude, you want to talk about comebacks and entertainment value. Our game in Hamilton with DeVaris Daniels making that toe tap touchdown.
Unbelievable catch.
It doesn't get any better, dude, and then you get Boris Beatty coming out and kicking the game winning field goal. It's just, the CFL is a different beast. And it really does bug me. When you get people online saying oh, the CFL stinks. It's it's not watchable. It's no, it's watchable. It is a great game to watch. And there are some amazing players in this league. You just have to appreciate what the game is. It's not the NFL. And if you're coming to watch the NFL, you're going to be sadly mistaken, and it's, and for me, if you want to take your family to a game, you want to buy some merchandise, you want to have some hot dogs, you maybe want to have an adult beverage or two, there is no better value in the city of Toronto than on a Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday at BMO Field coming to watch the Argos, in my opinion.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I can't wait to get down to BMO Fields to watch Bombers and Argos later in July, because I have a goal of getting to every CFL stadium to watch the Bombers play. And I think that BMO is one of the best places you can watch. Unfortunately, I haven't been yet, but I'm excited to go down.
Well, when you're down there, give me a shout and we'll hook you up with a free T-shirt or something like that. But you have to wear an Argos T-shirt. You can't be wearing that Bombers crap.
I'll make sure that as long as the TSN camera doesn't get on me and show all my family and friends back in Winnipeg.
Yeah, perfect. We'll just make you a big sign.
Sean, we're getting towards the end of our time on today's episode, so I want to ask some rapid fire questions, a few, just to have a little bit more fun before we go.
I hope these aren't as tough as the family ones, dude.
Oh no. I will do as easy as possible so that we can zip through.
Favorite color. We can start with that one.
Favorite Notre Dame player of all time.
DeVaris Daniels.
Favorite Maple Leaf of all time.
Travis Green.
Ooh. Very, very a hipster answer, but not an incorrect one. Favorite Packer of all time.
Aaron Rodgers, baby. The greatest quarterback to ever put the jersey on it. Greatest quarterback to ever throw the ball.
Best hockey movie of all time.
Slapshot and Miracle.
Best baseball movie of all time.
Major League 1 and Major League 2 doesn't exist. When they changed out Wesley Snipes for Omar Epps, they ruined the movie.
Best football movie of all time.
Oh, I gotta stick tried and true here, man. Rudy is the most inspirational movie and maybe best football movie ever made. You either love it or hate it too.
And final question: if you had the chance to interview courtside, rinkside, field side, any player currently playing in any of the leagues that you follow, as in NFL, MLB, the major 4 plus the CFL, who'd it be and why?
Can they be retired or they have to be playing?
Active.
Okay, that's who I. It's another one of those good questions, man. Um, Honestly, I would probably say Aaron Rodgers. He's a very interesting individual.
Yeah.
Like with like the holistic stuff and COVID toe last year. Like
Ca-
he's he's a very interesting cat, and
His
I would like to ask him some questions.
his segments with Cabby, I think, really speak to that as well. And I think that's a bit of an inspiration
Yeah,
for the kind of
I mean,
content that he can generate.
yeah, like what pro athlete do you know is lifting their foot and putting it at a Zoom record to show everyone what like COVID toe looks like? You know,
I couldn't tell you. He's
no,
definitely interesting.
he's a very interesting cat.
Sean, I want to thank you for having been on today's episode. It was a great time chatting, and I love being able to dive into the different fandoms that you follow and what it's like being a part of the long-standing tradition of being a Fighting Irish, Packers, and Maple Leafs fan.
It's a lot of suffering, my man. But thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
And thank you to the listener for enjoying today's episode with in-stadium and digital host of the Toronto Argonauts, as well as ringside reporter for the Toronto Marlies, Sean Bowen.